Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast. We are in better surroundings than usual, not in the doldrums of our PinkUn HQ studio. We are at Colney Training Centre. I'm your host, Connor Southwell, joined by Paddy Davitt, Sam Seaman as usual, but we're also delighted to be joined by Mark Attanasio, majority shareholder at Norwich City. Mark, great to see you. From what I gather and having sort of seen you at the forum last night, it's been quite a long 24 hours for you.
Yeah, long. We left. Actually, probably left for the airport. I can't even keep track of the time now. Then probably 3 hours before the flight. Then 11 and a half hours, 3 hours here. Watched training yesterday, which was it was interesting to see Liam's style firsthand, because we had interviewed him, our Mike and I and our partner Richard Ressler, but to see it in action was really fun. I thought he could get out there with the guys a little bit, actually, but he was just running the plays. In any event, and then last night, then I got awakened from a phone call from a surgeon at 1 a.m. But here we are.
Excellent. Yeah, well, it's fantastic to see you. I mean, talk to us a little bit about your plans for this trip, because I can imagine when you come over, and obviously your team as well, there are lots of people that want to see you, lots of people that want to talk to you. And thankfully, you found some time to speak to us, which we really appreciate. So, what are your plans for the trip, and I guess going to the Netherlands as well for a little bit to watch some of the pre-season camp?
Yeah, the idea obviously was to try to hit as many constituencies as we could. So, the supporters last night, the key media, which you all qualify as, along with the BBC, and we're going to meet the Blakely CEO and founder, front a shirt sponsor, and frankly, it sounds like he has a pretty exciting company. I might be more interested in investing in his company than getting him to be a extended sponsorship. So Zoe doesn't like that. She said, "Get him to extend." But and then we wanted to spend time with we spent a fair amount of time with the senior executives here, but the new ones like Liam, we want to spend some time with him, which we did yesterday actually, both before and after the event and on the pitch here. And also the players. I have real connectivity with our guys in Milwaukee. Now it's different. You play 162 games in 180 days there. So the championship is daunting in 46 matches, 162. So you see the guys a lot. You get to know their families, their kids. And I think one of the things we try to do in the baseball club, 21 seasons, is align from ownership to the executives to the field staff to the players and then to the families. Because you see after these guys basically all but 2 days a month are involved with the team somehow. And then after a game at like 9:30 at night, all the families, the little kids are waiting for their dads. And I know Josh, obviously, a couple of the other guys, but I don't know most of the players. And so I thought to get to know them, for them to get to know me, even though it's hard to bridge 6,000 miles, but to know our approach, that we care. Importantly, something we were talking about before we went on air here, that, we care about players, we care about their families, and we care about winning. And it's best to communicate that in person, and the reception's been great. A lot of the guys we met. What's the new guy's name? Kivis Garden.
Matthias, we'll call him Matthias.
What do we call him?
Matthias, we'll call him.
Matthias. Yeah, Matthias. He's sitting there. This huge plate of food, and then somebody points out, you should say hello to these two. So he looks up. He says, "Well, I'm the new lad." I said, "Well, you look the same as you did in the cathedral."
Yeah, there were some pictures, weren't there? And look, that seems like a nice place to start, because it's been a very busy summer. You mentioned it, change of coach. I think as we sit here, 7 senior signings. It's been a busy one for you, I can imagine. And as you say, navigating those time zones. What has been your involvement in everything that's kind of happened in the months since that season ended?
So one of the things, we think about ownership, and first of all, ownership is stewardship, and you are steward for community. Delia and Michael led this for 28 years, and so this is our, privilege now and responsibility, and so you want to be, supportive of everyone. So that what we try to do is support Ben. One of the things that we needed to do to support Ben was he didn't have enough staff here for the way he wanted to analyze things. So we brought a lot of analytics into play through a variety of sources. So when we look at players now, we have like 25-page PowerPoints with all sorts of detail, which frankly, Mike and I, actually, Mike, you probably understand it, but they've got these really odd graphs, and I'm not used to them. And there's a lot of detail behind why we would pick, Kivitz Garden over another, for example, wing. And then just because you can do it on paper, you have to actually execute. And so we had a plan going into this transfer window as to what we needed to achieve. Whereas I would say most clubs, frankly, even in baseball, most teams, they're more reactive. And what we wanted to do was be proactive, to use the sporting analogy here. We want to be on the front foot, not on the back foot. And so we just went right out. And fortunately, we have the capital so that if we did nothing if we were not selling Borja, we don't have to sell Josh. We don't have to sell anybody, and we could done all the things we've done and more within the P&S rules. That's what you call it, profit and sustainability. So we created the headroom last year. So one of the things we did last summer, besides going from the third oldest to the third youngest team, is we looked to create headroom so that we could make a lot of moves without having to make moves. And now again, you don't normally talk about, like last year, if we said, well, we've lost 7 games in a row, we haven't gotten points, but we got a lot of headroom for this summer. Nobody wants to hear that. Yeah. But to the point, there is a plan and there's backup. And what we need to do is execute that plan religiously and with discipline, because it's really easy to have a plan and then say, oh, but we can get this, left back. We know, we have different needs, but you also have to make the players fit properly, and so we're now the second summer into that, and I think if we can execute this summer, we will have gotten the first part of our plan completed, and we still have some moves to go. Now, Ben's got no pressure. Last night we talked a lot about pressure. No pressure, but Ben's got to execute.
Well, I just want to come back to you on that point about data, Mark, because is that the USP now? Now you, your family, Norfolk Holdings are in control, as it were. That was the process that played out last summer. But I look across the championship, and there's a lot of clubs who have, and we don't need to name them, but they have financial resources. So that's not a point of difference. There's a lot of clubs who believe in developing young players, and we're here at Colney, and it's an unbelievable facility now. But that homegrown academy thing, again, and also playing styles and cultures, a lot of clubs will try and lean into that. But is it that data, is it that intellectual capital that you bring in-house that you think you can leverage that can actually set you apart from what a lot of other championship clubs are trying to do?
Well, I think you need all of those things, and we're very respectful of all the clubs that have come in with capital, and also with respect for the fact that sometimes you can just have good luck or bad luck. And so what we're trying to do is we know it's worked in Major League Baseball, and it's really everything that we're saying, including keeping this alignment, right? So Liam Manning could be one of the best coaches in the championship, but if he's not on the same page and doesn't have the same mission we have, it's not going to work. We might have a very good season, but we take a step back in terms of developing. We have a very specific methodology. Well, he's got a methodology on how to develop players. We have a plan on how you bring players through and at what ages and how long you sign contracts for. And I think what's differentiated us in baseball, and by the way, our firm in money management, we make risky loans over 30 years, and in money management terms, our default loss is 20 basis points. That's 0.2%. So when you're lending money at 10% and you only lose 0.2% over 30 years, it's because you just follow through and execute. Same way we wanted Ben to execute this summer. And so I believe that will be a differentiating factor for us, as well as the fact that, one of my, actually our manager told me, when somebody tells you with all due respect, be careful. With all due respect to some of the rich people coming into it, they haven't run a sports organization, and we've run one for 21 years. So I think in some cases they don't know what they don't know. Now, if we're at the bottom half of the table and you see a bunch of other, well, just we got to be where we want to be, and it's all about that. And that's, we get a scorecard. And but look, we compete in baseball. We have the smallest market. There's, we have the fourth most wins in Major League Baseball this year. All the other teams have between $250 and $500 million payrolls, and plus taxes, we have 120. So some of the differentiation doesn't daunt me, but what we do have to deal with is there's a lot more player movement here. So some of our modeling doesn't work the same. In Major League Baseball, you have a player for 6 years, period.
Yeah.
Unless you decide to trade him. You don't have a case where, some of the cases we've faced. You talk about Josh Lott. Look at Gabby Sarra. He was great for us. Wanted to play up in League One so he could get on the Brazilian team. And, if he was on our baseball team and we sell it a couple of years under his contract, we would have kept him on the team to try to get, promoted or to get, and that's just not the way things are done here. And with good reason, right? Because there's a difference between playing in the set. One of the reasons we got to get to the Premier League is so that not only for our supporters and our pride, but so that we can attract better players and keep them. And it's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken about the transfer window and what you want to do a couple of times. I think one of the questions we probably get asked most as they relate to you is sort of about budget and how much the club has to spend each summer. But I think Ben's explained to us before that maybe it isn't as simple as you tell him he's got X million to spend this summer. It's more a case of presenting maybe what he'd like to do, and then you either provide the funds or don't.
No, that's right. We have this headroom challenge, and you don't want to get too close to it, because then you might have to make, made a big point how last summer we created that space. You don't want to have to make a move or not be able to make a move because you're too close to it. So you try to keep it within some sort of a range, and it's very manageable now. Also, for the way we're looking, it's probably not a secret based on how we have made these signings. We're looking to sign younger players who have ceiling and who have aspirations, and that's that's a good thing when they come here and perform. And then if we're not in the first league, that they want to go somewhere else, because we'll have the next player up behind them, and it's I think it's bittersweet for our fans, because all these players will look. I miss Teemu Pukki, so. But then I get excited about you miss one, you get excited about the next legend in the making, and we have a few of them now, for sure.
I mean, you kind of touched upon the data aspect, and clearly that's something I can't confess to know a lot about baseball, I'm afraid, but certainly from what you do read and what you do hear, that's been a major part of how you've built the Brewers. I mean, how far along are you in the process of building that data point here? Because I'm sure people have said to you about Brentford and Brighton. I'm sure you've heard a lot about those two as examples. I mean, are you sort of looking at those as kind of inspiration, or is it trying to forge your own way with what you're trying to do?
I think it would be both. So that's they're the best examples of what you can do you do more with less. They had years of gaming data and probabilities that they were, employing. So we have access to more long-dated information than simply what is in the public domain or what we would have here. But I'm mindful, like if I look at our analytics program in Milwaukee, it really started in earnest. It was in early days in like 2014. It's about 10 or 12 years in. This is not equivalent. I would say where we were when I started looking at this intensely about a year ago was like 2014 in Milwaukee. I think we're probably, I don't know what you say, Mike, 2018 now. We're starting to get up the curve. But one of the challenges is as you get more steeped in and hire more people, and in the beginning you don't know what you don't know. So we have many more professionals working on it now than we did last year, which would have been 4. And just by way of comparison, in Milwaukee we've got over 40, and it's not just an arms race like that, because you can generate a lot of data. You have to generate probative data. You have to have data that aligns with what the coach wants to do, and you have to be able to transmit it to the players. If you go to like some more guys out on the pitch with like a notebook full of stuff and how you have to do things if you're in this position, that position, that's very, very hard to translate. Also, there's a lot more motion here. So baseball has, of all the sports, there's the most point-to-point measurement. Here, it's not so. It's a little more complicated than that. And so, I'd say if it's a 90-minute match, we're in minute 20. Would you say, Mike? More than that. All right. Okay, I'm sandbagging a little. I'm sandbagging.
But I'm guessing access to all that, and as you say, that development means that when Ben does come to you and he says, "Look, I've got Matthias, Chris Gordon," I think there's a really good investment.
We could move very quickly, and frankly, we had to move quickly on him, not only because of the competition, but he wasn't really on our radar screen because we had no reason to think we could get someone like that, and yet we had the backup to move quickly and confidently, and. So we'll see. It still has to translate.
Of course.
It still has to translate, and I'm very respectful at how hard that is, and I'm respectful that with all that data, we spend, whatever we spent for him, and somebody spends triple that to get somebody. That's somebody maybe better than Chris Gordon, but that doesn't mean over 3 years they will be, and then you develop, I guess we call it in Milwaukee a flywheel of players coming in, players going out. Then you're always building up you're building up the floor. So the good news is, in some sense, it depends on where you want to measure. The first match I saw, we played Tottenham in the Premier League. I think the first half it was 2-1. I thought, oh, this team's better than I thought. Then Tottenham decided to try a little bit, like 5-1, and. Then Delia and Michael basically last summer said we were in charge, but we had a lot of influence in the signing of Ben Napper, and a lot of influence in taking the risk on a coach coming from Johannes did a lot of really good things here, and definitely got this. It's like building the foundation for a house. A lot was done last year, that's very positive for what we have now. That if we had a different coach would not have been the case. So he definitely moved the ball forward or whatever. I don't know what the soccer analogy would be. Advance the ball up the pitch.
That's right.
That's good.
And so then I think we really felt we could lean in after we, closed on the 85% in March. There was no doubt about that, but it's different when you've, closed and everybody then knows, okay, you're and we've made some quick decisions, but almost everything is reasoned. The calls, as obvious a decision as it was, we're focusing on Matthias a lot. There was, Mike, ownership hours spent on that, hours, because it's something we don't take lightly, and we need to understand it. We also need to be able to measure, everything in the process. When something goes wrong, which inevitably will, we don't want to make the same mistakes twice.
Just on that point, I just wondered, has anything changed now that de facto you are in control in terms of shareholding mix, day to day, week to week, with your interactions? As you say, you're 6,000 miles away, it's difficult. The reason I ask is because obviously you know John W. Henry very well and Tom Werner at Liverpool, and there was a quote the other day. They've obviously done a rather large transfer this summer. Florian Wirtz, 116 million reportedly, and I think John was asked, "Well, do you go to the football department at Liverpool and say, well, no, that's a lot of money. Can you justify?" And his answer was along the lines, "Look, we back their judgment. If they come to us with a proposal, then we're not going to interfere in that regard." I mean, has the dynamic shifted at all this past sort of 12 months in terms of how you interact with Ben? I mean, there was, and you can clear this one up for us, there was one or two suggestions that maybe the the way it ended with Johannes, that might have been coming from your side of the pond, as opposed to Ben Napper going to you and look, I think we need to make the change. So really, I think fans would be interested to know, has there been any material change in terms of that relationship between, as you say, the ownership and Ben as the figurehead of the footballing department?
So, in reverse order, he came to us. We were surprised. I was surprised. We just had Johannes and Glenn out to our facility in Arizona a few weeks before. And, but to the point of what John and Tom said with Liverpool, we have to back the judgment of the experts. Yeah. I think if I'm an expert in something, it's in finance. Even with baseball and all the success, it's just terrific job by our baseball operations group, and then our field staff, and of course our players. So our goal is in ownership is to support everybody and give them direction, but support. It's also our job to be able to measure. So what's changed, and it really we've been developing, we've been merging a business model so that the team can be, you don't want to get into financial trouble. So that the financial rules are in place, the profit and sustainability rules, but yet teams still get into trouble. So we built a model, a business model that really was bottom up from the sporting side to say, how would you see developing this? And this goes back to when Ben was interviewing with us from Arsenal, how he would develop it. Said, okay, let's say we have no headroom issues and we'll just say yes to everything. How would you build something up? So we did a bottom up model and know what that is. And then and that was done in collaboration between Ben and Anthony Richens in business, because there was a lot of financial modeling. That took 6 months. And then finally, just as happy, we had to get that right, whether it got done in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It happened to get done very, pretty much as the season was ending. And so, and there's a lot of assumptions that go into that, including the type of player. So when we're going to make a particular player move, we have to know, well, you gave us this model. We didn't say to you, we want this, we want that. And how did this fit? And they have ideas, they have their own terminology. I have to go through how the sausage is made, but, they have different ways of calling a player, from, beginning, how they describe an 18-year-old to how they describe a 35-year-old in terms of the arc of their career. And so you want to be able to tether to that, and so you can say, well, why does, for most clubs you say, oh gosh, we never thought we could get Matthias, let's go. Yeah. Yet we spent a lot of time understanding why they feel he was so good, how he would fit into this club, including if Josh stays. What happens if Josh goes? How does it affect Ante Chernak? How does it affect, Jurasek? And so forth. And then how you would see his progression if we go to the Premier League and if we don't. And so that's, ours. And again, it's easy with someone like him because it's, you know what the answer is going to be, but you still want to know, so that when you look at, right now they're looking at a couple of midfielders, and then you can apply that thinking. So what's happened is we are more forcing those meetings, and there's a lot of prep work that goes into the meeting with us, but it's frankly not that different. So at my money management firm, we manage $50 billion. 50 billion. So guess what? I can't work on every loan, but I approve every loan, me and the other founder. And so by the time something comes to us, it is highly unlikely we're going to say no. Just like when, Matt Arnold in Milwaukee proffers a trade or a move, it's highly unlikely we're going to say no. Maybe one a year. But it's not because we have a different view of the player. It's because what we're doing, why are we doing something different than we otherwise do every day? And so far, I would say there's not a single thing Ben has wanted to do, including move on from the coach and move on from the coach before the end of the year. You know, that was if you just look at our, Craig Counsell is one of the best managers in baseball. He was with us for, I think, 8 seasons, whatever, 2015 or whatever to 2023. We then moved our bench coaches with us for 9 years up. So we're very tenure based. We're not, Ben had to actually demonstrate to me why he needed to do it and needed to do it then. Most importantly, I think, he can discuss why he felt the timing was favorable. Then I think it did get him out in front of other coaches and things. I think it did work. I don't know if we could have gotten Liam if we weren't one of the first teams that was a really good team. Look, this is a really good situation. Yeah. I would not have bought into this if this one really, everything, this is, I guess there's an expression, plug and play. You've got this great training facility here. You have a really great stadium. You have 10 years of sellouts, storied franchise, fully staffed. And, but so just the hardest thing to do is figure out how to win. But imagine having fair to win. Well, you have to, I know we want to improve the stadium. And I know we want to maybe buy a few more practice pitches here. I know there's even more we could develop in terms of our training facility. But we're already Category 1. Not that I'm competitive, but I think Ipswich's town is still at Category 2, just saying. Not that I'm competitive, but they'll be Category 1. And it's all there for us. We don't, we could actually focus on developing the team. Of course, we want to make the fan experience better because we can make the fan experience better at Carrow Road, and we can make more money. If we make more money, we can spend more money on players. Because no matter how much money we have, I guess I made a bit of a face yesterday when they said, well, you couldn't spend the money. Well, yeah, we actually could. We have a lot of resources. But you can only spend 75% of your revenue. So we got to drive revenues. So we want to do all that. But the first priority is what happens on the pitch, and what happens. We have a plan in Milwaukee where we look forward 3 years and think in 3-year increments we can always compete. We have developed the same plan here now. We have a plan for this year and for next year. Now, I'm going to say it on this podcast. Sure enough, I'm going to have some lousy match. And I say, well, great. It's great you're looking forward to 2027. So
you need to start off the PinkUn message.
I'm spending a lot of time on 2027.
You touched upon a lot there. I mean, we'll obviously ask you about Liam in a moment, and there'll be so much that we want to talk about, and without taking too much of your time. But Carrow Road, I'm sure you've heard it a lot. That is a topic that fans are interested in, and
I walked right into that yesterday. You guys posted that. I didn't. That's one of the. Delia asked for very well. You could say she asked for a little, asked for a lot, but one of the we really love the community. Do everything for the supporters. Open your checkbook. We talked about that. And keep the name and keep Carrow Road. Don't name it something else. So I told her yes. So if we don't change it, everyone should thank Delia.
But in terms of sort of improvements around that, I know there's been talk for years and years about expansion, and clearly that's a very difficult thing to do and a time-consuming thing to do. I mean, where is your head at in terms of what the future of Carrow Road looks like, and because you spoke about this well last night. It's clearly something that you've done at the Brewers in terms of stadium upgrades.
We do the same thing with stadium upgrades in Milwaukee over 21 years that I talked about with players. You have a long-term budget. You list every line item of everything you want to do. Then you figure out how to sequence it and how to do it properly so that you get a return on investment. The fancy business term is, Anthony Rich's, what's the ROI? Return on investment. And sinking a lot of money into something that doesn't return on investment isn't very productive, because you could take that money and use it for something else. Again, fortunately, we have the resources, and the CapEx doesn't count. It doesn't count against our headroom or ability to get players. But everything we're doing a stadium renovation in Milwaukee now and has to get done over 2 seasons. Most of the things we see here and things we're looking at is really a 2-season thing where you do it through, as soon as season finishes, you do a bunch of construction, then you have to stop, then you can't use that part of, Carrow Road, and when the next season's over, you continue. And so we want to look at things that other teams are doing. We don't have to invent, new ways to have great, open experiences for younger supporters. Plenty of figure, where do we do it here? Who does it displace, if anyone? It's very hard if you've been sitting in the same seat for, I met with a supporter last night who has been a season ticket holder here, he said, or from when he was 1972. And he pointed to where he used to sit. He showed me down at the end, and I forget, which end because it was dark, but you could see the seat. But now I moved over here. But that was his choice. When you say, well, we're going to knock a bunch of seats out so we can have a big open air thing so young people can come in, that's disruptive. And so we have to work through that. And we've got to have at least a half a dozen projects sitting around Zoe's desk. She's very uncomfortable talking about it, as you can see. That's fine. And so partly because you don't want to get everybody excited about something, and then you may have a permitting issue, or who knows. And also there's some. It's nice to have suspense, like with whatever the third shirt's going to be. I gotta say, Mike and I have seen it. It's pretty good. Yeah. But so Connor, we're gonna. I gave my grandpa's expression. Measure twice, cut once, and we have even some crazy ideas on how you could dome the stadium without doming it with the way they're doing things now with tenting and whatnot. So. And again, I understand we still have light in people's eyes, and we have to, and we're keeping light in the eyes because we think we're going to get back to the Premier League. Yeah. So.
And on sort of the short term more a little bit, obviously we've spoken already quite a lot about last night, and one thing I took away from that, from both you and Liam, obviously the new head coach, was sort of an ambition, and you got the sense that everyone on that panel was quite keen to go places quite quickly. So what was it about Liam that convinced you he was the man to do that this season?
Well, the way we do the interviews, which was true with Ben Apper too, I just come in when somebody is sort of near the finish line. I got involved with sporting directors when there were 4, the final 4, and I think they'd interviewed 12.
Yeah.
Liam, they had interviewed a number of coaches, and he was they felt the first choice, the second choice, and the third choice. I said, "You sure you don't want me to meet anybody else?" No. Just and he came in with Ben. It wasn't as simple as there was like homework for everybody to come in who was interviewed and say, tell us what you would do with this. Here's the squad. By the way, in our money management business, when somebody wants to be an analyst, it's kind of silly, but we say, okay, you cover the energy industry. Here's our portfolio. What would you do with this portfolio? Yeah. And that's a lot of work, because we got 10% of the portfolio in something. We have over $1 billion in it, and how would you change it? And the person who actually got the job had a very good idea, and was a better idea than the energy analyst who had left us, and that was good. So, likewise, Liam had a very specific idea of what he wanted to do. Not only look, that his style. I was here actually back to the good news and bad news, I guess, back to Dean Smith. Yes. So I've seen his style up front. David Wagner, Johannes, and just from afar since he beat us last year, Liam, and so like if you hire a contemporary architect to build a house, you're going to get a contemporary house. Yeah. So we knew what his style would be. But what are you going to do with these players? And there were intensive discussions he had with Ben on that, and I think Neil. And so by the time it came to us, it was more, big picture. And frankly, at that point, it was as much trying to. Although I thought he was going to want to do it, so I said to Ben, "It sounds like if we have a bad interview, it's going to be on me that we didn't sell them. But and so that's what was interesting is, Liam Manning, 38 years old, long time footballer, and my business partner Jean-Marc Chappis, who is Harvard Business School graduate, managed money for all these years, gets up in front of our investors, says, people, process, performance, good, process leads to good performance. Last time I'm sitting there and Liam says, you have to have a good process and want performance. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's great. So you want to have a like mindset. Of course, there's going to be, and ownership doesn't, we don't. Look, when I was an early owner, did I meddle? The word would be yes. Starting when we hired David Stearns in 2015, that stopped the very first year. I said, okay, I'm going to see what he did. I kept a little scorecard of what he was doing, what I would do, and his was better. So I said, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
And then he made one trade that was unpopular, and then everybody was criticizing me for not blocking it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, so 10 years ago I was criticized because I was meddling. Now I'm being criticized because I'm not meddling.
Yeah.
And so now it's great that everybody, which is absolutely the case, but if we ownership, you have to take responsibility, and so there will be things behind the scenes that we will guide. We haven't had one yet, but there will be something that we say no to. And we all know it's a collective effort. And if we ever say no, I hope we're right. And by the way, you can't just, we're just not blindly saying yes.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 years ago, because I was on the board, I'd get even, Stuart Weber, I didn't even know what, I didn't know the first, I was like Ted Lasso. Stuart would say, we got to make this move, do this, do that. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
Sounds good. So now I understand a little bit. Actually more than a little bit, but we're still here to support the vision that Ben has and the business side that Zoe and Anthony have, and to support the players.
Yeah.
Final point then, because as we say, I know you're very busy and you've got lots of stuff to get on with today. You kind of touched on it there, but optimism from the season, I think we spoke about that a lot last night, and the energy that was around the room. Clearly you're feeling that as well, but I thought it would also be interesting because I've heard you're quite superstitious, and I'm sure there's lots of people who watch Norwich City who are the same. So can you talk to us about some of those superstitions that you have and how you go about following the team over the season?
Sure. One of the things that I said to Liam after the meetings yesterday, I said, I'm a little uncomfortable. We're all talking about the playoffs here. Let's, the problem is if you don't, people, but let's, we haven't even played Millwall yet. I am up at sometimes at 4:30 in the morning. In fact, I'm going to be in my seat and awake and watching, right? Because the match starts. And by the way, we watch on BBC. I get the feed, and if I can't mirror it onto the television, I put it on Paramount Plus, but then I sync it so I listen to our announcers. Mike and he lives less than a quarter mile from me, and so a lot of times we say we're going to get together. Well, if Josh Sargent gets an early goal, then we're staying in our place. I'm saying I will move if I will move around my kitchen. Sometimes I'll move to a different room, depending. And my mom said to me once, "Where did you get all this from?" I said, "From you." Italian mom. Are you kidding me? So Italians are superstitious. Sports people are superstitious. I'll wear the same clothes a lot. There was a while there where I put on the Canaries warm-up suit, black warm-up suit. No matter what could be a hot day in January, and I've got it on. We lose a couple matches that went off. We had those black goalie jersey, blue goalie jerseys. I put on the blue goalie jersey with the sweats.
Just trying to find a combination that works.
That works. And so. And I've said in some of these I still can't believe in football that when you're ahead, that clock is like just so slow. And when you're behind, it's like, what do you mean it's already the 92nd or 2 minutes into stoppage time? So yeah, that and I also know now enough, not quite, but I can, for the most part, tell if somebody's had a good game or not, even if they haven't scored a goal. And you can see the positioning. And, I cannot tell you how many times Mike and I text each other where you could just feel the other team scores a goal and you could just feel it coming. Like we'll text, this doesn't feel good, if we're not watching together. And then, 3 minutes later, boom. So it's, and there's nothing worse than, there's nothing better or worse than an own goal, depending on which way it goes. So, yeah, and, I've got all kinds of superstitions in baseball and they're mounting in football here.
Good stuff. Well, Mark, look, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And it's been great to sort of see you in person over here, of course, as you like to get across the season as well. Paddy, Sam, thank you guys as well. Thank you all very much for watching and listening. Of course, we'll see you again very, very soon for the next one. Welcome back. So there you go. That was our chat with Norwich City majority shareholder Mark Attanasio. We've relocated to Colney. This is be a location. If you're watching on video, if you're listening on audio, it won't mean a lot to you, but will be a lot more familiar to you. I think Sam's actually in the chair that the Norwich head coach would typically sit in come press conference day, but we've relocated to the press conference room. Paddy, what was your thoughts? I think we've got 41 minutes, so we stretched it a little bit as to what we felt initially, but lots of good stuff in there from Mark Attanasio.
I thought it was, I mean, we are literally we've kind of walked from one part of the training ground to this media room, so it is only in the last 5-10 minutes, so subject to watching it back again. But the initial sense I had was very open, and following on from Tuesday night, we were all there at the fans forum, the BBC Norfolk summer scrimmage, and it just feels to me that he's not only really invested in it, because that's probably stating the obvious now, but that he, as he said in our chat, he really gets it now. He feels he understands the nuance of whether it's the player trading element, whether it's the competing against other championship teams, and I get the sense that he, like a lot of fans who were in that room at Carrow Road on Tuesday night, are very excited and can't wait for this new season to start. And in many areas, I liked a lot of the stuff around the process that led to Liam Manning. I thought that's something we've not heard, publicly before. So that for me was quite illuminating. And just more broadly, the model that now is in place and the infrastructure that's in place around data and making data really that point of difference to get ultimately this club back to the Premier League. And Mark, everything he said to us, everything he said on Tuesday night at Carrow Road feels like that is the mission statement, and exciting times ahead. And I think it feels increasingly to me, and every time you sit down and you listen to him in that setting as well, that we've just had the privilege to do so, that Norwich as a club are in very safe hands, and a lot of that, of course, is the parallels with what he and his family have done with the Brewers, that longevity, 21 years, and he talked a lot about that in our chat, and the crossover there. But if I'm a Norwich fan looking out to in, and I see a guy there who clearly has the financial resources to make a difference, but actually holistically has built something that is so sustainable with the Brewers, as he said in our chat, probably in terms of wage and payroll, they're in the bottom 5 in terms of Major League Baseball, yet they consistently outperform that, they overachieve. And that if you bring it full circle, Liam Manning is here now as the head coach because he overachieved with what he had available at Bristol City. So you can see there's a lot of the principles maybe that have led to the success of the Brewers they're now trying to embed here, and hopefully, that alignment he talked about from top to bottom continues on into this championship season, and everything we heard today just reinforces for me that I think there's a good season ahead. Sam, your key takeaway from the chat?
I think probably the ambition going forward. I really like that. I think he made very clear, as he referenced both before we started recording and then towards the start of the chat, that he really is about winning. And I think he probably expanded to a point where you can understand he's not just about quick fixes and sorting things very short term, but he is ultimately looking to get the club in the Premier League, and I think he wants to do that as quickly as possible from this point, really. But I think he's realistic about how you do that, about working on the process of it, so that you're almost improving the probability rather than just gambling everything on doing it on one occasion and then sort of leaving it down to luck, which I think he also made clear is he understands quite a big part of football, and I think we've seen that over the last few years at Norwich. So I thought it was quite encouraging. I think if I was a fan watching that, I would have felt good about it, and probably at this stage that's easy to do because there haven't been any games played. Everyone's pretty happy and optimistic going into the rest of pre-season and the start of next season, but ultimately I think they are doing things the right way round. He talked so much about the way that they sort of build the process, both in his sort of financial firm and what he's doing with the Brewers and Norwich. So I think it aligned with everything we've heard from mainly Ben Napper, which probably makes the most sense because ultimately Attanasio was a big part of him being hired, as he said, and also Liam Manning to an extent from what he said so far. So I think you get that sense of alignment, but also that sense of ambition, which when you compare it to the comms of last season and the problems that a lot of fans had around Johannesov Torup and the sort of various different timeframes that were provided throughout that campaign, I think they've been very, very clear this season. And although obviously the results will dictate how people respond to that, I think at this stage to have that clarity is probably a major positive that they didn't have last season, and I thought Attanasio only added to that today.
Yeah, agreed. I really like the sort of data stuff and how they've advanced that in the last 12 months, and clearly since he was able to kind of take the reins with the 85% from Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones has aided that process. That was really insightful. I think that was probably something that we've not really heard before in that sort of level of depth and how they're scaling up and how it was a 25-page report on or PowerPoint on signings, which is some depth they're going to. Adam Harvey joins us for this part of the show. I mean, you were very busy doing all the stuff to make sure it looks good and everyone can hear it whilst it was going on. But maybe you had the best view because you could listen to it whilst you were doing that. I'm not saying you were sat there with your feet up by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, for us, you're always kind of thinking of the next question, the next bit, and what points have we got or what points haven't we got. So, what did you make of it and everything that Mark had to say over that 40-minute chat or so?
Yeah, again, a very engaged, shrewd man who knows what he's talking around, and I think, clearly from maybe some of the previous media he's done to now, I think he's certainly that understanding he mentioned around football and being a lot more clued up. I think that came across quite well, and sort of the way he was speaking around Ben Napper and the way they back him, and it's not just a case of their involvement, dictating a lot of the actions that the football club make. Clearly with Johannesov Torup, there wasn't maybe a lot of clarity. We, I think, tried to give the clarity, and there was maybe a little bit of mixed muddled water around whether it was them that made that decision, but he reaffirmed that it's Ben Napper that makes all those footballing decisions. They're just there in the background to kind of sign it off and maybe give a little bit of input. But that data you mentioned, is a clear point now moving forward that this football club's going to only embrace more and more of in the way that they sign players and all the sort of revenue streams, etc., that he delved into. And I think the exciting thing for me is probably the Carrow Road factor. It's something that I sort of, walk down to Carrow Road sometimes and you sort of wander around and you think, we obviously go to football stadiums all over the country following the football club, and I don't want Norwich to become one of these sort of soulless bowls that we often have to go to, but I think there is certainly scope for modernisation in certain areas and trying to make that sort of fan experience outside the stadium a lot better. We see it in some of these other places we go, big fan parks, and I know Norwich have maybe started to try and bring that in, but I think there's clear, a route there to probably try and maximise that and maybe get fans more engaged with each other before games outside, and even post games. We've obviously got the Lion and Castle now, maybe more of those kind of spaces, which again will only bode well for the football club from a revenue point of view, but also the fan experience that he's pretty clearly driving forward, and something that he wants to bring across from his work at the Brewers, and then stadium expansion and the way that might look in the future. I think that's only exciting for Norwich as they try to progress further up the chain and hopefully establish themselves as a Premier League football club with a bigger support base over a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, the Carrow Road point, Paddy, that's something that I remember David McNally speaking about. That would have been 10 years or so ago now. So it's something that's been long discussed and never really put into action. Clearly, and Zoe Webber explained this at the fans forum, it's kind of cost prohibiting at the moment. But you get the sense with him, and look, he's got experience of doing it with the Brewers, that is something that he would like to make a reality.
And of course, a very close ally and now a director, now clearly a main figure in Norfolk Holdings is Richard Resler. He's a long-time associate. I think they were at college together, weren't they? So, who has a background in real estate, and from how it's been explained to us previously, that he is across the more fine football footprint at Carrow Road and potential infrastructure. I think Mark, as I say, we've just finished it, but I think he said it was double figures, wasn't it? The amount of projects they potentially got and that they're doing.
12, I think he said.
I thought it was 12, yeah. Feasibility in and around the stadium. Varying degrees of ambition, I'm sure, in terms of delivery and how long it would take, as you say, up to the top end of the scale of, did he say something about a dome over Carrow Road? Yeah. Which all sounds very exciting and visionary into the future, but in the here and now, they clearly want to make that fan experience better and almost immersive, and part of that, of course, is, which overlaps then with the transfer window we're currently in, to make the product better on the pitch and a better grade of player for Liam Manning. But also it is, as Adam said, you walk to Carrow Road on a Saturday afternoon, you before you even get inside the stadium, you want to feel you're part of an experience. There's a happening, you want to be there, you want to interact with your fellow fan base, as we see a lot of clubs have clearly gone probably a bit further than Norwich down that path. You're right, David McNally. I remember actually seeing plans of, because they've got the access road behind the City stand and then the parcels of land thereafter, and almost building up and over, like you go to Manchester United and you walk through that Munich tunnel stand, and Wembley is similar as well, where you build up and outwards, and all of these look great on architectural drawings, but they cost tens and tens of millions of pounds. And also I thought it was very perceptive from Mark in our chat on that. Probably the disruption in the interim of moving people who've been, he talked about at the fans forum on Tuesday night, a gentleman had pointed out he'd been a season ticket holder since 72, and this took him to where his seat was, or pointed out through the window at the top of the terrace, and you're dealing with that and that emotional attachment, and I can understand from Zoe Webber's perspective that's the difficult part of this. Yes, it's financing these grand projects, but it's also that managing change element. But it has to come. It has to come, because, as Mark rightly said, the cold financial element of that is you increasing matchday revenues, be it through bigger capacities or just more to do in and around the stadium footprint on a match day. Bigger revenues means more money available to be recycled for the availability of Ben Napper and transfer funds. So it's all interlinked. But there's no doubt, and we've got I'll get a plug in. We've got a product coming out a little bit later in the year to commemorate or celebrate 90 years of Carrow Road. In some respects, it does look quite tired now, and I think it is in need of a bit of TLC. And there's no doubt that they, Mark and Richard and the rest of the executive team, understand that, and it's just how you manage that process. But it's very much a sense of, it's not just about Liam Manning, Ben Napper, and the squad this summer. There's a lot of other programmes and plans in and around that to try and elevate the status of this football club.
Yeah, and at Tuesday's fans forum, there were lots of other that we'd have loved to have had Mark for 2 hours and been able to speak about every sort of different facet. That wasn't the reality, but and you can go and watch the fans forum, I think, on various channels now. But he spoke about the commitment for the women's team and all of those aspects that they're trying to build up as well. So it is more than just the team here at Colney. And as I look out the window at the press room, I can see them training now. But clearly that is where the focus will be, Sam, after what has been 3 years of real disappointment since that Premier League relegation. And you get the sense, and to be fair, you got this sense on Tuesday night listening to Liam Manning, Ben Napper, Mark as well, Zoe, that there is that sense of ambition and want to bring the good times back here, because I think we've all seen this football club when it's good and when it's on the up and when it's successful, and it's some place to be.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's ultimately the reason why Attanasio came here. He referenced it as, I think, plug and play, which basically means he feels it's ready to go and reach that Premier League goal, which is what ultimately they've been talking about ever since he arrived. Regardless of the various time frames in which it's been talked about, the different strategies that there have been under different head coaches and things like that, it's very clear that he as an owner is someone who is focused on getting to the Premier League and owning a Premier League club. So I think you add all of those elements together, particularly those that he has sort of oversight on, obviously, in terms of the very minute details of the team being picked, the tactics for each game. That's more Manning's realm. And then with Ben Napper, it's a little bit broader. But with Attanasio as the person who obviously oversees sort of the whole club, I think he sees so many positive elements. And I think those are easy to pick out when you compare them to a lot of clubs. And there are a lot of clubs that I'm sure we'll expect will be in a better position to get promoted from the Championship this season. That actually, if you analysed the wider club elements and the facilities available and the resources, Norwich are in a much better position. And I think when you consider that, it's only right that they should expect to be a Premier League club. I thought that was actually one of the standout moments of that forum that you referenced, was when a fan basically stood up and told the panel that they need to big Norwich up a little bit more. And I think there is a recognition that that's what they're trying to do, especially over the last few years, the infrastructure they've built up. They feel that they are in a position to be a Premier League club, and ultimately Attanasio wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. He's got the finance to be able to invest in a wide variety of Championship clubs, but he's picked this one, and I think that tells you a lot about his ambition. But ultimately, it's now been nearly 3 years since their investment was first confirmed, and they aren't in the Premier League. So I think those time horizons are getting smaller and smaller, and they will be getting less patient, and probably rightly so. So yeah, you definitely get the sense that the ambition is there now, and although it isn't completely win or bust because of those processes we've spoken about, definitely the communications at the moment are all about feeling that they are ready to be that club and doing everything they can to get there.
Yeah, no, I mean, just finally, Adam, because Sam makes a good point there about kind of the ambition elements, but you get a lot of these, there's a lot of American owners in football at the moment, in Championship, in the Premier League, and, you hear them speak, and all of them will say the same. It's about success, and it's, about finance and buying players, but it feels like underscoring all of this with Attanasio is a real know-how of how to bring success to a sporting operation. It's not the same sport. There's plenty of differences, and, he admitted it himself. He's learnt a lot probably in the 3 years that he's been involved. But there is evidence of a strategy that he's built up in another sport and has had, as Paddy referenced earlier, had real success with it. And that strategy is probably the bit that, certainly speaking for myself, I probably find the most exciting.
Yeah, you frequently reference, how the Brewers were a last place club for years and years and years, and then he went in there and put the sort of building blocks and the foundations in place, and gradually they managed to sort of get themselves now in a position where they can win games and they can compete against sides that, you look at the sort of relative wage structures of sort of those baseball teams, and they're not even on the same stratosphere as those, but they can still, regularly every season get themselves in and amongst it with those top teams. And I think that's clearly the goal and the vision that he sees for Norwich, because, one day if they do get to the Premier League, unfortunately, and they're never really going to be able to compete with the big boys, but if they can put the right kind of structures in place, and they can use data, and they can be innovative and sort of find ways to try and do it, and, try and replicate maybe that success that Brentford, Brighton, et al. have sort of had in recent times, then that's got to be the way that they strive to do it. But I think underpinning it all is a clear care and sort of a passion, for the football club. It's not a set of owners that have come in and just going to throw money at it to try and get there and then potentially leave the football club in a mess. I think, they said they watch games at 4:30 in the morning, over in America, and you don't do that if you don't care. So I think overall I came away from, this and everything else that's been going on this summer just feeling more positive for the season ahead, and let's hope it's a good one.
Absolutely, and that's a nice place to end it, gents. Thank you very much, and thank you very much as well for watching, listening throughout all of this. Since you have stayed to the end, we'll drop you in a little training exclusive, because we can see it going on from out the window. So I can tell you, as of 5 to 12 on, what's the date today? Wednesday the 16th of July, Josh Sargent is definitely still out there. So that's something. Could all change very quickly, but that is the case as of today. Of course, if you enjoyed this interview with Mark Attanasio, like it, subscribe, all that good stuff ahead of the fresh Championship season. We've got a subscription offer as well. You can find out all about that at PinkUn.com. But for more stuff like this throughout the Championship campaign, that's the best place to go. We've had so many of you sign up and take that up over the weekend, and of course we'll be out in the Netherlands following the team as well. I think they're flying out this afternoon. We're heading out in a couple of days, so that's all the more reason as the optimism builds ahead of the new Championship season. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again very soon.